Pop quiz, hot shot. It is 3 Things Thursday, and Berm doesn't want to know what those things are on a Thursday as we get ready for the podcast daily. He is Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Did you have a great birthday?
Yeah, it was fine. You get to a certain point in your development where birthdays don't really matter, and they're actually not a good thing because it's just one step towards that inevitable cliff of death.
Well, I think it's good that you said you're still developing.
Well,
you could be going the other way.
I mean, going the wrong way is still developing. It's just developing wrong. But yeah, it was fine.
All right. Well, we are getting set. We're 2 days away. Ohio State hosting Iowa 3:30 on CBS. Still getting used to saying that about Buckeyes games being on that network.
Oh, that means it's Gary Danielson again, right?
Well, we don't have to hear it. You're going to be on the sideline. I'm going to be on the press box. Just like we didn't have to listen to the broadcast crew on Peacock, at least until you rewatch the game. So we're fine, but it's everybody else who might be getting tortured. That's not where the thing.
But the good news is for those people who don't want to listen, at least because it's on CBS, you'll be able to sync up your radio with Paul and Jim, because the streaming options don't really allow you to sync up the radio with Paul and Jim and watch it. So
I felt terrible for those fans. At home, not in Spartan Stadium, the stream was being broadcast in the press box, and I think it was like 3 minutes behind what we were seeing live. I've never seen a delay quite like that, but again, shouldn't be a problem. Saturday in the Horseshoe on CBS. Thing number one, Berm. What is one thing you have heard in the last, I don't know, let's date back to Saturday. After the game Saturday, Tuesday press conference, I don't know, any other podcasts that you might have heard talking about Ohio State, Michigan State, getting ready for Iowa. It's one thing you've heard from or about the Buckeyes that you can't stop thinking about.
I think it's about activating Caleb Downs, because I just think that's such a funny term to suggest, to say, hey, we're our best player. We're now scheming for ways to actually use him other than having him just sit in the backfield and be a safety net, and no pun intended. So I'm curious, we talked so much over the first 4 weeks, like, what does Chip Kelly have up his sleeve? What else can the Buckeyes do offensively? And for all the discussion that we had in the offseason about wanting the defense to be a little bit less predictable and be a little bit more multiple, I've given up hope that it's going to happen on the defensive line, but I do wonder what that means for Caleb Downs as they continue to find ways to deploy him. But you can only do that because you're so confident and comfortable with Lathan Ransom back there next to him, because Lathan, we may end up seeing looks that eventually look like a 3-high safety look, or a 3-high look, and Caleb coming down more in the box, or Lathan. So I just think it's interesting about the defense, because we have not talked much about, well, what else can the defense show? And maybe it's time to start thinking about that. The activation of Caleb Downs, and then immediately seeing the dividends in the game against Michigan State, where you see him making splash plays that he had not made earlier in the year. Not to say that he was not playing well. He just wasn't making those big, like, ooh plays, the Gabe Powers type of plays,
Yeah. I mean, that was easily Caleb Downs, his best performance of the season. And it was on Saturday night. Like, he doesn't need a breakout emergence and announcement of his arrival, because he already did that on the national college football landscape a year ago. But in terms of the first time in scarlet and gray, that was like, holy moly. And what we heard about him, I think, also plays into something that you took note of and saw on Saturday, and you asked Ryan Day about that, maybe Jim Knowles as well, just the sort of coach on the field stuff that he's doing.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's so beneficial for Ohio State. And I was talking pregame at Michigan State with some of the people that were there in the Ohio State contingent, and talking about just how crazy it is when we were talking actually about Sonny Styles and how just freakishly athletic he is when you just see him move around and stuff. And you're kind of waiting to see when that next piece happens for him. And this person just unprompted is like, what else is amazing? Caleb Downs plays for Ohio State. No one talks about that enough. And then he had, his game that he had. So he's been so impactful without really doing the things on the field yet that people were expecting. So once you combine those things, watch out.
I don't suspect that's going to be as much of a problem now. Like the first 3 games were relatively quiet, at least on a Caleb Downs scale. But he changed that in a big way against Michigan State. He's going to be pretty important Saturday against Iowa. The thing that I heard that is like just bonkers is Jeremiah Smith saying, I don't think there's any such thing as a 50-50 ball for me. I was standing in the press room at Michigan State. Great press room, by the way. I don't know if I can stress that enough. That is one thing that Michigan State does very well is invest in a beautiful room for the media to do post-game press conferences in. And Steve Hellwagon, he had the stream up on Peacock to listen to the post-game interviews, the most respected sports streaming site in the world, Peacock. And Jeremiah Smith made that comment, and I was like, oh, man. And then you and I got in the car to leave Spartan Stadium about 2 hours later, and you watched it, and I got to hear it again, and it just sounded even better to me the second time he said it. I would listen to him describe 50-50 balls being in his favor over and over. I'd make it my ringtone. Because they're not. Like, I don't even know what the percentage is. Is it like 95-5? How high can I make it? Is it 100-0? Probably not, because we saw Davison Igbinosun win a 50-50 ball against him in training camp. So he doesn't win all of them, but he wins the vast majority of them. And I didn't feel like it, to me, it didn't come across as him bragging about it. It was just a simple statement of fact, which is also bonkers.
Yeah. And the cool thing is that we're still seeing the development of Jeremiah Smith. I mean, from the week before, quite literally the week before against Marshall, where he is trying to explain what he did wrong on an interception that ended up not being a 50-50 ball, really, because he was playing defensive back on that play ultimately. To seeing him say, okay, now I'm going to fix this. And now, like, that wasn't even a one-on-one situation where Will Howard just threw the ball up to him. That was the first one with the hands all over his face. That was a 2-on-1 situation. So I don't even know that 50-50 is the correct term, because he was supposed to be at a 2-to-1 disadvantage there, but he's so spectacular that, we're seeing him still learn how to be a true college receiver and an NFL receiver ultimately. But like, sometimes the physical talents are just so overwhelming. And I think I've mentioned this somewhere this week. We talk a lot, but to me, that was the entire takeaway of the Michigan State game, was like, if you have better players, sometimes they can just do things you can't stop. And Jeremiah Smith is one of those guys. And as much, and we don't need to continue harping on about how good he is, because we've talked about it enough over the last couple of weeks. But when you combine that talent with the work ethic, with the drive to be better, but you also combine it with that confidence that comes from knowing there's nobody that's going to stop me if I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, like, that's a crazy combination.
Right. Yeah. He has more than lived up to the billing. And I think that was one of the great quotes that I've ever heard, because I sometimes like when people are, pounding their chest and, really being honest and being cocky and trash talking it up and getting some WWE flow going. But he's just like, nah, I'm going to catch everything that comes my way. And it's true. And you can't argue against me. I thought that was awesome. So that was a thing that I heard. How about one thing, Berm, that we're not, you just said that someone at Ohio State thought that there hadn't been enough conversation about Caleb Downs. What is one thing that you think we're not talking enough about for Ohio State?
I want to go back to the safeties, because I don't think Lathan Ransom and the impact that he's made in his entire career is something we talk about enough. But I'm going to channel the spirit of Bill Landis and talk about Josh Simmons, because he has been so good this season and was pretty good a year ago in a spot that I don't think anybody anticipated him being good in. I mean, there were a lot of people who flat out just laughed off the idea of Ohio State starting left tackle being a guy that transferred in May from San Diego State. But Josh Simmons has turned himself not only into a second-day NFL pick like I projected a year ago, but into the clear-cut best offensive linemen on the Ohio State team right now. And I say that even knowing that Donovan Jackson is still going to get maybe a little bit more NFL talk and a little more NFL love because he's a 4-year starter or 3-year starter, 4-year guy, a guy that's former 5-star, et cetera. So people will want to talk about him. And Donnie's played great in his first 2 games. But what Josh Simmons has done in cementing that left side of the line, this is going to sound stupid when I say it, but I don't know that you can pinpoint a moment where you're like, oh, Paris Johnson would have been better there. He's not making mistakes. He's not getting the stupid penalties. Like Paris Johnson's a great player, but physically he's so elite, like the size, the footwork, all that stuff. Josh Simmons is not that. I'm talking about on-field production. What would be different right now if Paris Johnson were there? I don't know that there would be anything different. Wow. I'm not making the argument that he's the same type of NFL prospect. Let me be clear, because of Paris's size and the 3 extra inches that he has and all that stuff. But what he does on the field when he's playing as clean as he's played, does not have a penalty this year, does not have a false start, which was the thing of last year that everyone worried about. No holds. I'm sure he'll get him. Maybe he'll have a crappy weekend because I'm jinxing it, but he's been so good and no one's talking about it.
I thought when you first said it, you were like, whoa, I went too far. I need to pull this back. And you did it for like half a second, but then you went and doubled down on it again. And I'm trying to find a way to argue against it. I'm not sure if I can with the exact point you made. What would be different? I'm not sure. I mean, Paris had a tendency to take people to the sideline or like dig up a hole in the ground and then put them in it in a way that maybe Josh Simmons hasn't done. But at least in terms of executing,
go back to the Marshall game, you'll see him taking people to the sideline. Well, he's playing nasty football.
I'm not saying that he's not. I'm trying to find a way to illustrate the difference between them. And you made it hard because Josh Simmons made it hard because he is playing at a high level. He's allowing them to execute all the things that they want in terms of pass protection and the run game. That doesn't mean that Paris Johnson, you would just say, no, buddy, you're good. You don't need to come back.
Of course. If Paris Johnson were there, we would probably see Josh Simmons at right tackle. But because, again, Paris is a prototype NFL top 5 pick in the draft type of freak. But my point is, production-wise, what you're seeing on the field, the way he's grading out, et cetera, like is in that same discussion.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think we briefly saw Mitchell Melton, heading towards the bus, and the way that the second half played out, I don't think at the moment I remembered what he actually finished with a sack and a half in this game because he wasn't playing a ton of snaps, and he probably still won't moving forward, but he did not get enough conversation from us, even though we said hello to him on the notebook. Yeah. We just kind of breezed right past it, and I felt bad broaching the subject in a way. I was like, hey, don't you think you should play more? Because obviously there's nothing he can say about that. It's not his decision. And I've said many times that I think that a healthy version of Mitchell Melton really elevates what Ohio State's pass rush could do. But he did not get the acclaim maybe for what he did off the bench. He is fully healthy. He is, I think, the most interesting pass rusher. Best motor is going to be Caden Curry. The best technical skills seems to be Mitchell Melton. The best total package, we can flip a coin maybe between JT and Jack, but I don't know. Kenyatta fits in there somewhere. He's got the most freakish build of any of them. Between those 5, there's got to be a way to build a pass rush that can do the things that Ohio State started doing late in the second quarter and then put the game away in the third. And I really don't know the answer about how to best concoct that. I know that that's what Larry Johnson and Jim Knowles are trying to figure out. Once they get rolling, they're pretty unstoppable. And Mitchell Melton's addition to that group, I don't think got enough conversation from me specifically.
Yeah, I think that this weekend is going to be a very interesting study in what Ohio State's going to do the rest of the year at the defensive end, defensive line rotation. Obviously, we're assuming we're going to get Tyleik Williams back this weekend, and that changes a lot because I don't think you need to deploy the Rushman package as much if you can have Tyleek in there rushing the passer from the 3-tech.
Well, I still think they should use a third defensive end there.
Oh, I agree. But I'm saying you don't have to take Tyleek off and put Jack, Caden, Kurt, Caden, JT, and Kenyatta or Mitchell. So I do think that's interesting. This weekend is going to provide some context clues about where they're going over the remaining part of the season. So it has felt at times like Mitchell Melton gets thrown in there at the end when the game is decided and not getting some reps in the key moments or in the undetermined moments. But I said it Saturday night after the game, there is a noticeable difference in just the juice that is on the field when you are bringing in Mitchell Melton and Caden Curry and Caden McDonald. And I think that's hard to dismiss. And I also believe that it helps motivate Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. And so, I just think rotation is good, but your best players need to play. And then your difference makers, the guys that are actually playmakers, need to play. And I think that it's been hard to exactly determine on those 5 defensive ends who's what right now, because there's just not a lot of reps. I mean, we have not seen JT Tuimoloau. I mean, he made 2 absolutely game-changing plays on Saturday against Michigan State. The hitting Aiden Childs in the second quarter, it was the first time anybody hit him all day, and obviously he was shooketh after that. The pass rush that he had on Denzel Burke's interception, like he seemed like he was activated, and so I wonder how much of that is just like, hey, I'm getting some reps and now I can go. How much of it is the fire being lit under your butt by someone else? I mean, it's all the questions, I guess, that people have to figure out with their inner psyches. But certainly Mitchell Melton has proven himself to be warranting some playing time in key moments.
Well, I mean, it's a great point, because Saturday is a legitimate test in my mind against Iowa, even if it is still a 3-touchdown spread between Ohio State and the Hawkeyes. But you're talking about Iowa, Oregon, Nebraska, which I think is the easiest of the 4 games in October, and then at Penn State. Like, this is the month that's going to tell the tale for Ohio State in the regular season. Like, I'm not taking anything away from the importance of Ohio State winning the rivalry. I never will. But this is not a world-beating Michigan team. And even if we want to include Indiana in that November slate, which they could very well be unbeaten at that point, like, October is unquestionably the stretch that is going to tell us the most and tell the playoff about who this Ohio State team is. And I think that starts Saturday, and I definitely think that is worth watching on the defensive line, because, as Ryan Day made the point a week ago, these guys have to be able to stop the run. That's their first and primary mission, and Iowa's more than capable of providing a test there. They've provided others in the history of this series in the Big Ten. So thing number 3, Berm, is the first thing that you think about when Ohio State is playing Iowa.
Boy. I mean, it's hard to get Iowa City 2017 out of my mind. So, I mean, if I'm going straight negative, I guess that would be it. But it's actually probably 2013? Carlos Hyde, the touchdown run he had at Ohio Stadium against the Hawkeyes.
The bounce back. And
yeah, that was like a absolutely prototypical Ohio State and Iowa game day. Just garbage weather, like so gray. But I remember that play by Carlos Hyde as sort of a ray of sunshine. But again, I think back to terrible things like the 2004 game against Iowa, where the Buckeyes just got absolutely annihilated by Tim Dwight and the Hawkeyes. But
I thought it would be difficult for you to come up with a positive response, to be honest.
I mean, I could go back to 1985 and Chuck Long against Ohio State when Iowa was number 1 in the country and the Buckeyes won that game. There's a lot of Iowa, despite the fact that it's, boring as hell. Their history, they got a lot of history in that program. But for me, let's see. The thing that really gets me is that Xavier Wamp is playing safety for Iowa and not Ohio State, because I still think he should have ended up in Columbus. But the recruiting efforts and the safety that the defense that Ohio State was playing in the 2021 season completely ruined that chance. So maybe they'll catch him on the flippity flip.
Maybe. I mean, he could have already taken that opportunity, but maybe when Lathan Ransom is in the NFL, he'll want to play next to Caleb Downs. Who knows? We shouldn't be putting things like that out into the world.
Hey, I'm just wishful thinking. That's all.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think for me the answer has to be 2017. I remember the feeling of existential dread after the first snap of the game, really before that, because there was the normal gray skies. We were checking the weather, like, ooh, I don't know if we're going to be able to stay in Iowa tonight. It's like there's a hurricane coming. Like,
yeah,
we got to get the heck out of here, and the horrible weather's coming. We were scrambling to try and adjust travel plans. What should we do? How fast can we get out of here? Can the Buckeyes make this a quick game? And it was right on the heels of the Penn State comeback, where I had to sit there after the first play of the game, and then the ejection and things getting out of control, the fake field goal. Like, after the Penn State, I had written a JT Barrett column where I said, not just that he needed to win the Heisman, but that that performance and that comeback, like, Ohio State was going to be building a statue for JT Barrett. And
they probably still should.
Maybe they won't.
Or at least a plaque.
They could put a plaque somewhere. His accomplishments are unique and historic, and he's got some records that are not ever going to be broken. But then that pick six happened, and I was like, oh, this column is about to be quote tweeted to oblivion, and I don't want to be any part of this. I got to get out of here. And it only got worse from there. That second half, I don't remember covering anything like it. Even Purdue was kind of like, I think I can understand why some of these things are happening. But Iowa Iowa 2017 was a shell-shocking experience. And then we still had to go drive and beat that storm out of there. So all night in the car until we found somewhere that we could, sleep, was just like, what the hell did we just what happened?
Yeah. I remember, I think it's funny because obviously Bob covering 17 with 4 minutes to go in the first half when Nick Bosa gets ejected for what I thought was a pretty sus targeting call. And then Iowa pulls off the fake field goal, takes the lead. And then I had never seen under Urban Meyer in Ohio, even the year before with the 31-0 loss to Clemson, like that game, that was never gonna be a win for Ohio State. From the jump, that game was a waste. But that game at Iowa, I did not have the feeling like they were gonna fold. And to see that team fold the way they did was extremely bizarre. And it's something that I've gone back to a few times as we try to contextualize the Ryan Day era, because there haven't been those moments under Ryan Day. And there, think about, was it the 2019 Big Ten championship game against Wisconsin, when the Buckeyes went into half trailing and looking like utter garbage with maybe the best Ohio State team we've ever seen. And then they come out and put Wisconsin to sleep in the second half. And then Josh Proctor nearly kills a man to end the game. Like the entire vibe had shifted because Ohio State went into halftime and said, you know what? No, we're not doing this. I think about that game. And I compare it to the Iowa game or the Purdue game, or the Michigan State 2015 game, where Ohio State just didn't have any juice at all. And I've accused people of not whitewashing the Urban Meyer era, but I think romanticizing it a little bit at times, where I don't know that it was always quite as great as people made it out to be. Because the 7-0 against Michigan wipes out any other memory that people have. But that game against Iowa was the first time I'd really felt like they just quit. And that was shocking to me.
Yeah.
And then to see them do it again at Purdue the next year was equally shocking.
Yeah, you don't want to make that a habit, for sure. And
that hasn't happened under Ryan Day. And so I think I don't know that he gets any credit for that, which maybe he should.
He should. That's the bonus thing that we're throwing in there on three things on a Thursday episode of the podcast daily, getting set for Ohio State hosting Iowa, the latest iteration of a traditional Big Ten rivalry, a feud, a series, an unforgettable matchup of programs. Can't wait to cover it. Still got a few more things coming your way on the podcast in the next couple days in the build up towards kickoff, 3:30 Saturday, Horseshoe, CBS. He's Berm. I'm Austin. This has been 3 Things on the Podcast Daily. See you later.